This is Pauline Garance-Odonc. She is a Furman student here in the class of 2019, and I'm going to ask her a few questions about dual language learning and development. So Pauline, just a few questions that I want to address with you just to kind of get an idea as far as where you're coming from, especially since you are a French student and you've only been here in America for quite some time. And it would just be great to have some of your knowledge as far as this information will come across with. So my first question for you are, what sort of qualities can be identified with any kind of dual language education?
Well, I would say that the first main thing is the fact that you get to interact with people from different cultures. For instance, my American high school, so I was in an IB program, so I got to be in class with another French student, a German student, people from India, from China, from South America. So that's something that I really enjoyed, simply because even if I've traveled to some of those countries, I really didn't know the culture per se when it came to food, clothing, or dance, because we had this international festival where we basically combined all of our different cultures. And I thought it was really cool because moving to the south of the US, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I was like, it's probably just going to be white, very Christian people. And I was very surprised to see how much diversity was in my school. So I would say that one of the best things about a dual language community or school is the diversity and the fact that you can exchange with all of those people.
Okay, so it's definitely one of those things where, there was definitely that sense of anticipation thinking, when you are in an environment, like where you were in high school with the IB program where you were, that there was that sense of anticipation being like, oh, I'm going to be exposed to people that were definitely different from me, but they were more all the same. But in this case, it's more different in the sense that you learn about their cultures, their languages, all sorts of things like that. What sort of linguistic aspects of where you studied a factor of the environment where you were? So were the languages that the people that they spoke, where they came from, like people from China, people from South America, people from all these different places, how was that kind of molded together at your school?
Okay, so first of all, those people, their parents were from those different countries, but my friends were born in the US, so they were technically American citizens. So I felt like even just talking to them and getting to know them, you could definitely feel that they were American, but there was also a part of this cultural background and things that they do at home. For example, for the Chinese New Year, we were in my chemistry class. I remember Caroline, she now goes to University of Pennsylvania. She's really smart. Anyways, and she was talking to us about her traditions, what she does. And in France, we have what we call Chandler Day. So that's when we make crepes and we just put them in the frying pan and stuff. And so I brought some crepes to class and I basically explained what this tradition was all about. And then we did the same thing with the Indian culture. So it was really part of those people, and since we interacted with those people on a daily basis, we just got to learn them, and in the process of getting to know them, we just basically learn about their cultures.
Okay, great. So, in your opinion, what do you think the possibilities that will come with the kind of dual language kind of environment that people will be in? What kind of opportunities can be in front of them with this?
So I feel like, of course, the main thing is the fact that you get to learn more languages. At my school, we could either learn Spanish, French, or German. But I feel like there's one thing that the American school system, at least in the state of South Carolina, should work on. It's languages. I know in Europe, well, we have a lot of neighboring countries that all speak different languages, so of course it helps. But taking the example, for instance, of myself, I'm French, so I had to learn English, because if you don't speak English nowadays, you can basically not do anything. But I also learned Chinese and Spanish, so I was basically studying 4 languages, including including French. And so when I moved here, I was really surprised that they only offered 3 different languages. And after a year that I spent at my school, they got rid of German.
Okay.
So I feel like those dual language programs are actually really helpful, because I feel like a lot of Americans just like don't feel the need to learn a foreign language simply because they
Mm-hmm.
already speak English, and with English you're pretty much like said you can go wherever you want. And I just feel like, working on those dual language programs would be a great thing, first of all, because of the cultural experience. And then it just opens you up and it shows you, broader things and broader horizons to like what's going on in the world right now. And learning languages to me is extremely useful. And I think it's also pretty cool. And when you apply to different jobs, you can see how much of an impact a
Mm-hmm.
person knowing two, three, or even four more languages has.
Okay, kind of going with that, how we were talking about, what it's like learning languages, especially over in Europe. How would you really compare the dual language kind of immersion that's like here, rather than like Europe or other places?
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to take the example of France because that's really all I know about. So
Mm-hmm.
in my high school, because I spent 2 months in my high school in France before I moved to the US, we had three different programs. So you could get basically before you graduated, you had four different options. You had the traditional option, which is 100% French with everything being taught in French. And then you have three different options. So most of your classes, at least your language classes and your history classes, were taught either in English, German, or Spanish. So you would get to learn about the culture, you would get to learn more about the language, and those classes were usually made for kids who had already lived abroad. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, we have Michelin in France in my hometown, and there's
Mm-hmm.
also the Michelin Company in Greenville. And so most of the kids had already lived abroad, so they were basically fluent in French. But then there were kids like me who were just doing good in class and who wanted to be part of that immersion program. So you had to take a test and then, to be part of that program. So I got in and I felt like it really helped me, because we really focused on like grammar and stuff, but also on literature analysis and stuff like that. And I felt like even if I only spent 2 months there, it really prepared me for moving to the US,
Mm-hmm.
because I went from like, just speaking a little English to having to speak English all day, every day, in a bunch of different subjects,
Mm-hmm.
including scientific subjects, which are,
Right.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
hard to learn and study. So
Okay.
yeah.
And my last question for you, you can kind of, give a little bit of your perspective on. Do you believe that there are any kind of immersion programs, such as like someone learning